Hey, this is Evan Marquette, dating and relationship coach for smart, successful women who have everything but the guy. Welcome back to the Love You podcast. It's good to see you. We're covering an important topic today, which is choosing yourself over a relationship. We're going to talk about the reasons that you would do that. And we're also going to talk about the reasons why that's not always the best idea. So stick around to the end. If you are a regular listener, please subscribe on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. Leave us comments. Leave us a positive review. It means a lot. It gets us into the algorithm, gets us into other women's lives. So also share it with a friend. And I want to make sure that you understand that what we're doing here is vital life work. I can't tell you how seriously I take this, even though it's dating and relationships and it might be frivolous compared to world politics and climate change. The thing that we have the most control of is not world politics or climate change. It is this. It's what you do in your real life on a day-to-day basis, the people you choose to surround yourself with, the decisions you make with those people. And I'm here to empower you to raise your relationship standards and get the love you deserve. If that sounds good to you, before we get started, go to evanmarkatz.com/7 steps, and I will send you my free mini course on raising your relationship standards and finding a quality, commitment-oriented man. Yes, it's possible. Yes, it's probable if you actually follow the steps that I've outlined for you. So without further ado, I say that enough. We're going to talk about 6 reasons that women choose themselves over a relationship, and I want to validate this. In fact, I had a coaching call last night where someone was saying she was having deep troubles with her family to the point where she thinks she has to cut them off, and it's affecting her mental health. And do I recommend as a dating coach that she keep dating in spite of this? And so those kind of things come up all the time. Right? I'm not going to dive into the answer because the answers to these are individualized. But I've got clients who are taking care of dying parents and have teenagers with mental health issues and loss of job. And when there's big outside catastrophic events, obviously, take care of yourself first. Put on the oxygen mask first. Dating's not going away. The reason that people turn to dating and relationship coaches is when they are in a more calm port and they look at their life and they say, you know what, I'm kind of lonely. Something's not working. I'm doing everything myself. I see other people with these connections. I see other people having people take care of them, and I want to share my life with someone. That's when you reach out to someone like me. But there's absolutely times when you're in crisis that you need to focus on your crisis first and foremost. And so here are the valid reasons to choose yourself over a relationship at a given point in time and what you should do in that act of taking a break from dating and relationships. Number 1, we'll talk about personal growth. Being in relationships are a catalyst for personal growth. You really learn who you are in relation to someone else. But sometimes when you spent your whole life right in relationships, you're a serial monogamist. My wife is a serial monogamist. There's some value to exploring who you are as an individual, uncoupled in the world. Right? Well, who are your friends? What are your hobbies? What is the thing that you want to do next now that you're not preoccupied with saving this dying relationship that's caused you so much pain and so much anxiety? It should be something that's ideally really freeing. And so if you take the opportunity when you're out of a relationship to engage in personal growth, and that includes therapy, that includes travel, that includes anything that you think is an opportunity for you to express yourself and gain life experience outside the context of a relationship, I am all for it. Next, and these things blend together, independence. I believe that good relationships are interdependent, which can almost turn into codependent. Codependent would sound like the healthy term, but I would be the first to say that I could not imagine myself without my wife. She's become such an inextricable part of my life over the past 17 years, and I wouldn't want to have to do that. But if forced to, if my wife were to leave me or to pass away, I would be forced to explore a life of independence. And I think there's probably a shift that one can make to say, hey, there's some freedom in not being tied down to one person, not for just the value of dating, just for the, I don't have to run anything past anybody else anymore. I can kind of do what I want when I want. I could eat when I want, and I could sleep when I want, and I don't have to feel under the pressure of trying to put someone else's needs first. This is where you become kind of the hero in your own life. And I do think women have to be centered and feel good about their single life to be the ideal partner. It doesn't mean you have to love being single to be the ideal partner. That's usually where this advice sort of flips over. But if the value of taking a break from dating and relationships is to explore what it's like to be alone, uncoupled, out in the world, I think that's indubitably a good thing, and something that anybody who tells you otherwise is not being authentic with you. Next, number 3, emotional well-being. Emotional well-being is where you're allowing your sort of nervous system to settle after you've been in a relationship where there was a toxic dynamic. You kind of have to heal. Sometimes relationships breakups are really sad because it's no one's fault, and you still love each other and you grew apart and you realize you're incompatible. But a lot of times you need to take a good long break from dating and relationships to sort of wash the stink off from the past guy, and to ensure that you don't overcorrect and go out with either the same guy in a different body, or to go out with a guy who's way, way, way different, right, than the last guy but once again, you've chosen poorly in a relationship because you were doing it as a reaction to your previous relationship. So, I've got a client right now who is taking care of her emotional well-being. And in this time, I don't think we can emphasize that enough. It's a pretty crazy time in world history. Maybe that's something that we're all saying right now because this is the time we're living through. We didn't live through the 1940s, and we didn't live through the 1860s or the 1780s. So we don't really know if this is any crazier, but there's certainly something going around where if someone says, hey, right now is not a great time for me to focus on love, I totally respect that. Love is when you're feeling lonely. It provides a balm for you. We all need people in our life to support us. And so that's the thing, is we could lean on, if you don't have a built-in boyfriend, you don't know how to find a partner, you can lean on your friends at this time for emotional well-being. You can lean on your family. You could lean on the people who you already have pre-existing relationships with, where it's not that toxic dynamic that so many people experience in dysfunctional relationships that you think are normal, that ultimately, I want to remind you, are not normal. They're common, but they're not healthy, and they're not something that should be maintained. The fourth thing I want to bring up is the concept of having unmet needs. There's a wonderful quote. I bring it up every once in a while on this podcast over the past 7-8 years I've been doing this. I think it's from the 5 Love Languages book, and it is, you're only as needy as your unmet needs. I love that, right? Because it implies that your needs are reasonable. And so what are the needs that you've been neglecting or have been neglected? We'll use a passive voice instead of just blaming the guy. But what needs have you been neglecting, right, as you catered to your relationship, as you bent over backwards to try to please your partner? A lot of people have neglected their fitness. Right? They might have let their body go and their diet go as their mental health spiraled out of control. They might have neglected their career because they were focused on raising the kids and taking care of the family, and didn't focus on that aspect of their life. So there's probably going to be something in any relationship where you have a finite amount of time awake on this earth. And if you put all this time into a guy and suddenly that time is freed up, that allows you to really look at your life. What have you neglected? Sometimes relationships are almost walled off. Maybe you've neglected your friends, right? You've pulled away from your friends because of this relationship. Sometimes that happens. You can reinvest in your friends. So taking the opportunity to reflect on what needs have gone neglected over the time that you've been in relationships is useful to you. And then there's the idea of setting new life goals. right? Now that this dream has ended, the dream that I was going to end up happy with this guy, what is it that I want? In fact, I'm going to fold those two things, and we're going to talk about just the idea of clarity. I was going to mention life goals, but I think there's a moment of clarity that can come from the end of a relationship while you're choosing yourself instead of another relationship, and that's, what is it that I really want? Now, again, I want to acknowledge there are some people who say after a previous relationship, I want out of relationships. Recently did a podcast on this. The statistics are there. It's not as stark as you think, right? The fact is that majority of people still come back to love, still want someone to take care of them, still value partnerships, still value intimacy, are not going to be perfectly content with a bunch of girlfriends and a cat. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But I've also had people come through my coaching process who came to the conclusion that 6 months of coaching with me taught them, gave them clarity. I really like my single life. I don't want to be with a partner. I would rather be alone. And that is viable. All right. So if being alone has done something for you, in as much as you realize that your nervous system has been bad under romantic relationships, you can come to the conclusion that I would rather do life alone. I don't have to deal with the pressures of men and the disappointment, and that's okay. What happens, and this is the point of the entire podcast, is that very often people do come to the conclusion that they would rather be alone, but it's only temporary. Most of the things we're talking about, right? We talk about these toxic guys and these bad relationships. They usually only say something about the guy and that relationship. It doesn't say anything about all men. It doesn't say anything about marriage. It says more about the men you've been attracted to, the men you've chosen, right? I tell lots of half stories here. I'm thinking of a very close friend of mine, and he was going through a second divorce. Both of his wives were alcoholic cheaters, right? And I remember sitting in his car in a parking lot after dinner, and he's got tears in his eyes. He said, "Evan, what do I do wrong with my life?" And I just said, "You made 2 mistakes and you doubled down on them." So just imagine, guy is in 2 really long-term marriages, 18 years or something like that with one, and 10 with another, right? And his whole view of dating relationships and marriage is based on those 2 people he chose. And then he says, "I choose to opt out of love." He didn't, by the way. He is engaged. But imagine that person chooses to opt out of love. And what's his sample size? 2 people, right? And the people he chose has largely due to what his childhood was like, right? And a thing that people work on in therapy and coaching and whatnot. So that's the thing. When we talk about choosing yourself over a relationship, which is a necessary function after a broken relationship, I think it's a good thing to take some sort of break. But when you get right down to it, most people are opting out of the idea of having a bad relationship. And what they're forgetting is the possibility that there are good relationships out there. So I've been doing this for a very long period of time, and I'm recalling a newsletter that I wrote once upon a time. Maybe you've read it. It talks about there being 4 different states of being. And for those who are watching on video, I will do some of my gesticulating now. I'm going to put my hand at the bottom of my chest, and I'm going to say the lowest state is being in an unhappy relationship, unhappily coupled, or unhappily single. If you're miserable being single, both of those are not desired states. To be in a bad relationship or to be unhappy alone are bad. So what happens is people get rid of the unhappily coupled part, they break up, and then their happiness rises. Oh, I've gone from unhappily coupled to happily single. And that is a place where what we're talking about today, choosing yourself over a relationship, women make themselves a home as happily single, and they focus on work and friends and travel and hobbies and pets and yoga and self-care, and it's all good, right? It is far better than being in a bad relationship, right? The problem is we forgot the highest state, which is to be happily coupled up. And there are people who are happily coupled up. You see it all the time. And all you have to do is just look around at married couples and people kissing and holding hands and taking care of each other in the hospital. And again, I don't want to make this dire, but love is all around us. So even if 2/3 of marriages are unhappy, right, we're still talking about tens of millions of happily married people here in the United States alone, right? And as long as you choose to stay happily single, choosing yourself over a relationship, I call that safe solitude. And it's good. I'm not judging anybody who does it. I don't judge anybody who chooses to stay single. I think most people are choosing to stay single out of the fear of being in a bad relationship, but they don't really contemplate the possibility of having a good relationship. So taking a break and choosing yourself is a good idea in the short term. If you're listening to this podcast, you know that. I didn't come out and pull you through your phone and convince you to listen to me. The presumption, if you're listening to me, is that you actually want a relationship and you want to know how to have a happy one. And so, yes, we could acknowledge the two sides, right? Yes, it's better to be alone than to be in a relationship with someone who's not committed to your happiness. And I also don't know any happily married person who would rather be alone, right? Where they have no one to share their bed with. They have no one to go on vacation with. They have no one to listen to them at the end of a hard day or to share fun life experiences to enhance them, make them better, to talk at the end of the play. Right? They keep really busy trying to fill that up with friends, but some of those friends have life partners who are their go-to person. So I know I'm in the tank for marriage. I'm an exporter of happy marriage, but for those people who are listening to this and saying, yes, I want to choose myself over a relationship, I see you, I honor you, I respect you. And when you decide you'd rather have a happy relationship than be alone, I am here for you. My name is Evan Mark Katz. I'm a dating and relationship coach for smart, successful women who have everything but the guy. You can get my, what is it called these days? My mini course called Raise Your Relationship Standards, 7 Steps to Finding a Quality, Commitment-Oriented Man, just by going to evanmarkatz.com/7 steps, the number 7. Give me your name and email address, and I'll give you this, this free mini course with videos that come out once a day for 7 straight days to teach you some of the most important principles of how to choose a healthy partner and never settle again. Finally, if you enjoy this podcast, please share it with a friend, subscribe wherever you are, leave us a positive review, and I thank you for listening to me lose my voice and get all excited about talking about the prospects of a happy relationship. I'm living it. I want you to have the same thing that I have. And I don't think you should ever stop until you get it. So that's all I got for you for today. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.